Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. I've written something tonight. My printer's not working, so I'm going to read it off to you off of a computer screen. But we have a crazy man in the Middle East who is toying with the idea of World War III. It's Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And he's trying to drag you and me into a situation that could easily lead to a confrontation between the two most nuclear-armed powers on the face of the planet, the United States and Russia. Two Russian airplanes have gone to Syria and are attacking Bashar Assad's enemies. Bashar Assad is an ally of Russia. On roughly October 6th, there were two Russian overflights of Turkish territory. They were very brief. Here's what Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, said about those overflights. An attack on Turkey, he said, means an attack on NATO. And he added that his country could not endure Russian violations of its airspace. Now, who is supposed to leap to Erdogan's defense, to the defense of Turkey, when he decides he cannot endure something? Turkey is a member of NATO, along with most of the states of Europe and the United States of America. That means we are committed to defending Turkey if it feels that it has been sufficiently threatened. In other words, it comes down to committing the biggest armed forces in the world to a confrontation that could end humanity. Says Erdogan, NATO has issued a stern ultimatum. He's playing around big time with the rhetoric of your power and mine, of European armies. His implication is that if Russia crosses the line, we'll have, as I said, World War III. But the big question is this: should NATO defend Recep Tayyip Erdogan from Russia? Not on your life. Erdogan is the Islamic State's biggest supporter. Yes, the biggest supporter of ISIS, the true monster of our times. Erdogan allows recruits, men, women, and weapons to flow freely to ISIS through Turkish territory. He lets wounded ISIS fighters come to his hospitals to recover from their wounds in Turkey. Worse than that, he allows ISIS to sell over $1 million worth of oil a day. Some have estimated as high as $2 to $3 million a day of oil through Turkey. In other words, Erdogan has helped ISIS become the most prosperous terrorist group in the history of the human race. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has helped that along. But there is something more, something else very big that is bulging in Erdogan's back pocket. A really nasty mess, something that indicates who Erdogan really is. Yesterday, that's October 9th, 2015, there were two explosions near the railroad station in Istanbul, the capital of Turkey. To date, we know that over 95 people have been killed by those explosions. Why were so many people gathered near the railroad station? Because they were mounting a rally for peace. And the people mounting that rally for peace were a pro-Kurdish and pro-minorities, even pro-minority rights for LGBT, party called the People's Democratic Party. the People's Democratic Party, that attack on the People's Democratic Party peace rally is not an isolated incident. 2 months and 19 days earlier, there was another very similar explosion at another People's Democratic Party, pro-Kurdish, pro-minority peace rally in a town called, where is the name of that town? The town is called roughly Surik, and 33 people, it is Surik, and 33 people were killed. The question is, who was behind these explosions and why? There were elections in Turkey in June. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's party, the AKP, was supposed to dominate the parliament. And by dominating the parliament, it would be in a position to ram through a new constitution. That new constitution is profoundly important to Erdogan. Why? Because it allows him to be president of Turkey for life. It allows him to be another Hugo Chavez. It allows him to be, most important, another Vladimir Putin. A man who can say, I am Turkey. But a strange thing happened on the way to the election. Turkey's democratic system worked, and it didn't work for Erdogan. In June, the pro-Kurdish, pro-minority, pro-peace People's Democratic Party, the party whose peace rallies have been attacked with vicious bombings, won a startling 13% of the vote, which gave the People's Democratic Party 80 seats out of the 550 in the Turkish parliament, and robbed Erdogan of the majority he needed to ram through his supposedly presidential new constitution. What did Erdogan do? How did he respond? Erdogan's minions couldn't ban the People's Democratic Party, which is something they've done to every previous Kurdish party that's ever risen on the scene to participate in the democratic process. This time, too many people were watching. Instead, Erdogan's minions assaulted the two leaders of the People's Democratic Party with court cases, and they broke the law. Any party that gets over 10% of the vote is supposed to be funded by the government. The People's Democratic Party, the pro-Kurdish, pro-minority party, has not received a cent of government funding. Erdogan has broken the law. But what's worse is that nationalist gangs, pro-Erdogan gangs, have attacked more than 100 HDP offices. HDP is the People's Democratic Party. They've attacked over 100 of the People's Democratic Party's offices. They have beaten and killed people who are simply reputed to be People's Democratic Party sympathizers. They've created mob rule, but it's not mob rule. These gangs are apparently strictly controlled by Erdogan and by his minions. Meanwhile, most of the newspapers and media outlets in Turkey are controlled by Erdogan's party, which means that either the coverage of the People's Democratic Party is slanted to make them look like monsters, or when they do significant things like major peace rallies, it's not covered at all. One People's Democratic Party activist says, thank God for Twitter and Facebook, because at least people have an alternative way to get the news, aside from the pipeline that the government so rigidly controls. There are a lot of smartphones, tablets, and laptops in Turkey. Thank God. It is a relatively modern country with a wonderful population of people, despite the monstrosity of its president, Erdogan. Erdogan, in response, still wants his supermajority. He still wants his constitution that makes him president for life, or allows him to be president for life. So how has he gone about getting it? He's called for snap elections that are supposed to take place on November 1st. Why? Because between June and November 1st, Erdogan's intention was to delegitimize and weaken in every conceivable way the People's Democratic Party. And the big tool he was going to use was war, violence, murder, killing. The Turks and the Kurds have been battling each other bloodily for decade after decade after decade. But the Kurds made peace with Erdogan. They made peace with Turkey approximately 2 years ago. They started a ceasefire. That ceasefire has lasted from then until just recently. Who broke the ceasefire? Who destroyed the peace? Erdogan. He started attacking. His forces started to isolate and burn homes and beat and kill people in Kurdish villages. His air force began to attack Kurdish positions, Kurdish towns in Syria and Iraq. The goal was to stir up Turkish nationalism, to say it's not us who's killing them, they are killing us, to make believe that the attacks the Kurds counterattacked with were in fact original attacks, the cause of the whole problem. No, it was Erdogan who was causing the problem. Because if you can stir up enough nationalism, psychological studies show that if you can show people that they are under attack, they will come together. And they will come together around a leader. That's what Erdogan was counting on. Did it work? We don't know. At the beginning of, well, okay, hang on a second. I've got my notes here. Barack Obama gave Erdogan, the president of Turkey, permission to attack terrorists. The two agreed they were going to attack terrorists together. Barack Obama had ISIS in mind. But remember, Erdogan is ISIS' biggest supporter. Erdogan calls the Kurds terrorists and immediately took that permission to start attacking Kurdish territories. And sometimes the Kurds struck back. Every time they strike back, that's if a Turkish military man is killed, he's a martyr. And that's a cause to bring the people together around, guess who? Erdogan. We don't know if this has worked. The elections are not coming for approximately from today another 3 weeks. But the leader of one of the leaders of the People's Democratic Party said the result is that Erdogan's thuggery means, quote, we are faced with a murderous mob state. This modern, advanced nation, Turkey, Erdogan is turning it into a murderous mob state. Why? Because he wants to follow the Vladimir Putin model and be president for life, which means that we have two murderous dictators, Vladimir Putin and Tayyip Recep Erdogan, facing each other across the Syrian border. And one of them says that he's a NATO member, and that if he doesn't like the way he's being treated, you and I will have to rush to his defense with all of the armies of Europe and the United States. Does Recep Tayyip Erdogan deserve your blood and mine? Does he deserve our taking a chance on the extermination of the entire human race? Does he represent a worthy cause? Not on your life. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. And now, for that infamously sleazy, slimy, sneaky, seditious, unfindable little off button, I think I've got it.